All right, hello and welcome to the webinar. So I appreciate you all joining, especially on election day. We look forward to having you engage in this webinar on security manager. So if you're not here for sure, a security manager webinar, you are in the wrong spot. We're going to go ahead and get started. First things first, general housekeeping for the webinar. So if you haven't used a Zoom webinar before, there's a couple things we're going to be utilizing. So first and foremost, the Q&A. So this is where you're going to be able to drop your questions in, and we're going to do one of two things. Either we'll answer them live, or we're going to save maybe a longer form answer for the Q&A that's on the back end of the webinar. Secondly, there is a chat. So if you don't want to do a Q&A, you can go ahead and submit things into the chat. You can only chat to the panelists and the host. I see there's a raised hands. Maybe someone get that in the chat and see what that's all about. And then also we will be utilizing polls and quizzes. So don't worry about the quizzes. There's no homework for today. But polls, we're going to keep it short and sweet. We only got 2 polls that you're going to be taking part in. So first and foremost, within the chat, can everyone see my screen? Can someone give me a yes in the chat? Awesome. Okay, thanks everybody. That's great. Cracks me up. Okay, so the chat works. So hey, we're off to a successful start. So who is going to be talking today? So presenters and panelists. So who's talking right now is Corey Baker. I'm the Director of Sales at Jobe. I'll be kicking off this thing, emceeing, but I am not the most important person on the call. The most important person on this call is Rudiger, who's going to be giving you the overview of Security Manager today. He works for Terra. We also have Paul and we have Barry. So Paul works for Jobe and Barry works for Terra. They're going to be answering your questions either within the chat or the context of the Q&A, kind of throughout and kind of having our backs and then reconciling any questions that didn't get answered. So that's going to be talking today. Before we get started, I thought it's important to address this. I don't know how many folks really know about Jobe, who we are. Maybe you just saw this webinar registration link, clicked on it. I want to know more about Security Manager. But real quick, Jobe was founded in 1999. We just celebrated our 25th year in business. Most folks know us for our products. We have over 10,000 provisions within the ArcGIS marketplace. And we've always been an early adopter of Esri's newer technology, especially ArcGIS Align and ArcGIS Enterprise. And Security Manager really fits within the DNA of that. We have some specialties, as many other partners do. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Platinum Partner. And our products. So admin tools back at my org, most popular products by large, Clean My Org and Scheduler making their mark as well. Where we operate, very heavy in North America. You can see some European activity as well as in Australia. This is a good mix of products and professional services customers. And we span all industries. So our products as well as our services are industry agnostic. So that's where we kind of live within that sweet spot. And then really quick, some other things we offer. So if you buy our products, whether that be any of our base products, Security Manager, you have US-based support. That support also sometimes extends to our professional services, which brings us to the other 2 buckets, our GIS services group and our software services group. These are the groups I interact with the most. So the folks over at GIS services do all the configurations within ArcGIS Align, ArcGIS Enterprise, data management, creation, scripting. If you need something, these are the folks we call. Software services does what you think it would do. So custom application development, extending the capabilities of things like Experience Builder, using custom widgets, integration, so on and so forth. UAV, UAS, collecting both imagery as well as LiDAR. And what you came here for today, partner solutions. So Jobe really selects our partners very diligently, and we make sure they align to where we're trying to go as an organization, where we think the market's really going to have the best success. So let's talk a little bit about Terra and this partnership. So we signed our official agreement in 2018, so it's been a minute. We're the only reseller in North America, and our partnership continues to evolve. So we love working with Terra. There's a lovely picture from this year's user conference. You can see it looks like people are happy and they're agreeing to things. And what did they agree to? Terra is actually a reseller of Jobe products in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. So we're super excited that our partnership continues to evolve. We love working with Terra. So as promised, we're going to get into a poll. And we're going to get into the meat of this thing too. I don't want to spend all my time talking and really get to Rudiger. So let me open up a poll and let me launch it. Here we go. We're making it super easy. Have you heard of Security Manager before? Yes, no, I didn't even put a maybe. It's that binary. And I'll give this probably about 30 seconds or so. There we go. Had to get a little stopwatch started. Awesome. Answers are flowing in. Okay, it looks like they have stagnated. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, share the results. So awesome. So it looks like some of you have heard, but a majority of you have not. So that is good. I appreciate you answering the question, or answering the poll rather. That's going to help Rudiger and me kind of take you through this with that frame of mind that most of y'all have never been exposed to this. There's not a 50-50 split. So that's awesome. So let me stop sharing that, close this down. And finally, without further ado, what you're here for, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, pass the controls over to Rudiger, who's going to give you an overview of Security Manager. And I think shortly after he kind of opens up, we'll do our next poll, and that'll be the last one you'll have to do. So Rudiger, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right. And you should be able to share yours.
All right, let's give it a try. And I hope it's working for you.
I can see it. I can see it. How's everybody in the chat? There, we got thumbs up.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so thanks, Corey, for the introduction, and hello to everybody just over the Atlantic from Germany. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce Security Manager to your audience here. And I'd like to show you today how Security Manager can help you to share data smarter, easier, and even more secure. And so let's get started with the slides. That's that easier than it's actually working out. So, all right, here we go. So let's first talk about the challenge we are trying to solve with Security Manager. So basically, this is what GIS basically is made for. So you have a data set, you publish a nice map on top of that data set, you build an app, and you have certain people who consume this information through the app, and they are probably happy to get access to such a data set. And when this is successful, then probably other divisions in the company might get also interested in this data set and want to use it as well. But sometimes you can't just share the same thing to all your different departments and divisions because there may be business reasons or privacy reasons, security reasons, why you can't share the original data set to everybody. So you have to adjust it a little bit and filter out certain information. And the usual way you do that in ArcGIS Enterprise is just to replicate it and set up additional services based on the same data set, but publishing another web map using a new app and something like that. And so as interest spreads, then probably also external users are interested in that, and you keep replicating your services and your infrastructure. And the more people want to access your data, and the more different kinds of configurations of your apps and maps you need to share, the more complex the whole picture gets. And especially the work you have to invest into that to manage this whole complexity and the resources you need, that's becoming very messy in the end. And Security Manager is made to solve this requirement or this situation by just publishing a service to your first division, as in the picture before. And when more divisions or when more user groups are added to the picture, you just keep the original service and your original web map and app running for all these different user groups. And inside of Security Manager, which has become a part of the ArcGIS Enterprise stack, you just define different rules. And these rules make Security Manager filter the information according to what the different user groups are entitled to. And so that means you can run with less services, you can run just with a single app, you can save resources, time and money by just providing a single resource to all your different users, but still be able to provide all these different configurations of one and the same content. So this is basically what Security Manager is made for. That means Security Manager is primarily made for protecting sensitive information in your GIS services. It can also be helpful to provide tailored content. So for instance, when you don't have any privacy or security considerations with your data, but you just want to make it easier, for instance, for field crews to find the data they actually need to perform certain tasks, then you can just strip down the content to what they actually need to do kind of maintenance or something like that, so that they don't have to navigate through the whole data set, but that they just get the piece of information they need for their actual task. And of course, that reduces admin efforts. So your GIS admins become more and more efficient, and it avoids redundancy and also saves resources. So let's talk about how that actually works. And as you all know, when you use ArcGIS Enterprise, you already have security capabilities inside of the ArcGIS Enterprise stack. So for each service you publish, you can define with which groups you want to share that. So you can either share that with a couple of groups or with the whole organization or publicly. So on service level, security is already provided by ArcGIS Enterprise. But when you want to go more fine-grained than that, then Security Manager ties into ArcGIS Enterprise. It's an extension of ArcGIS Enterprise, so it becomes part of the whole ArcGIS Enterprise setup, and it's implemented as an SOI, a server object interceptor. So that's the technology Esri provides to extend capabilities of the GIS server, basically. And then Security Manager adds different capabilities because it allows you to restrict on layers. That allows you to just provide certain layers to certain user groups without sharing all the layers. You can also restrict on objects. So within a layer, you can filter certain objects based on different criteria. You can apply spatial restrictions by using any kind of polygon or, let's say, geometry to restrict access to it. You can also restrict on access to fields. So when you look into the table view, you can simply hide certain table columns for certain user groups while others can access them. And you can also restrict on editing rights, because basically this editing restriction works on the ArcGIS user types. So some user types may edit, some others may not. But those user types who may edit, they may edit everything which is editable in your ArcGIS Enterprise. But sometimes you want to just allow a certain group to edit service A, while others shall edit service B and not vice versa. And this is something where Security Manager also can help. And in the end, by applying these capabilities, you can achieve what you can see here in the slide. So you can have users, of course, having full access to a certain data set. You can have users where you apply spatial restrictions. You can have users where you apply layer level restrictions on top. So when you look at these two pictures, you see the black dots have disappeared. So this is one layer missing in there. And finally, you can also restrict on objects. So when you look at the red lines, then you see that some of these red lines have disappeared while other lines still show up. And that means it's all based on the same service. It's all based on the same app. It's just different user identities. And these different user identities get different access. And this is all managed by Security Manager. And this doesn't only work in the map viewer. As I said, it's an extension of ArcGIS Server, and therefore it works behind the REST services. So everything accessing the ArcGIS REST service will, let's say, benefit from the access restrictions that Security Manager applies. So no matter whether you use ArcGIS Pro or a web app or field maps or dashboards or whatever you can think of, Security Manager works pretty application agnostic. So with all applications you can think of which access the REST interface, they will work in the same way and show the same content. So it doesn't depend on the actual application. It only depends on the user identity and the user policies, which are defined in Security Manager. So before I give you a quick demo, I would like to emphasize a couple of aspects of Security Manager. First of all, the integration aspect. I already said that Security Manager is kind of application agnostic. And this is why we chose this SOI approach, because it doesn't change interfaces. And therefore, all workflows which are running right now without Security Manager in ArcGIS Enterprise, they will also keep running when Security Manager is applied. For us, it's always important to support the daily operations of our clients. And usually our clients don't just run a single GIS. They have a staging system, they have a dev system sometimes, they have a user acceptance testing system. So they run different stages. And of course, they want to move different security policies through the stages until they are published on the production system. And this is also something where we put a very strong focus on supporting that very easily in Security Manager. This is done by automation. So we are very big fans of automation. And so Security Manager, of course, comes with the user interface. But besides the user interface, Security Manager also has a command line interface. And this command line interface allows to script all administrative tasks you can also perform in the user interface. So you can work completely without a user interface. You can script the whole thing and run Security Manager in a fully automated way if you want. And last but not least, for us, it's pretty important to have great flexibility. And therefore, Security Manager provides an extension mechanism. And this extension mechanism allows to reach out to external resources to read certain user data which are not available in the ArcGIS platform already. So it's probably best to explain that by an example. So let's think about one of our clients who's running lots of different projects, thousands of projects, and also has thousands of users. And each of these users work in different projects. And this client wanted to make sure that for each user, only features of their projects are shown in a map. And therefore, we built an extension, or we use that extension mechanism of Security Manager to reach out to a project management system. And then for each user accessing the map, Security Manager reaches out and reads the project IDs of the different projects assigned to that actual user, and is then afterwards able to filter accordingly. Otherwise, if you want to go by user groups or something like that, you would probably have to provide a user group for each of these projects. And this is pretty much impossible. And therefore, this extension mechanism provides great flexibility to Security Manager. But I think that's probably enough of slides. So let's jump over to the demo. And so what you see here is the user interface of Security Manager. Let me do it a little bit larger. That has two parts: the Service Manager, where you can define how Security Manager actually works. So for instance, you see here the folders which are published on our demo system. So these are the ArcGIS folders. When I select a certain folder, then I see the services published in that folder. And for each service, you see that log symbol. And as you can see, for some services, that log symbol is indicates that security manager is activated. And for others, it indicates that security manager is not activated. And this is because SOIs, these extensions, can be activated per service. So that means when you have services where you don't need these additional access control capabilities, you just leave security manager switched off and it will not interfere at all with the whole service. So it will only work where you actually need it. And then you have the option of editing permissions or switching it off, or look at some status information of your service. And you can jump over into the Policy Explorer. And as the name says, the Policy Explorer allows you to take a look at the actual policies which are in the system. So let's look at a sample service over here. This service consists of 3 layers. And as we can see indicated in here, these different layers have different user groups which have access to that. And these user groups, they are simply portal groups. So you see the group IDs in here. These are groups from our ArcGIS Enterprise portal. And for instance, we have a group here which is called California. And so we see that for this group, a spatial restriction is applied. So let's take a look at the map. First of all, I take a look at the map with a user which has full privileges. So logging in here shows you how this service is actually published. So it's covering the United States. As you can see, we have 3 layers published. And yeah, this is the unrestricted view of that service. Now I go ahead and open the same thing in an incognito window, which allows me to use a different identity. And now I'll use an identity of a user from that California group. And this is what you actually see. So it's basically the same service, but you see it's restricted spatially to the area of California. And you can also see there are only 2 layers left because this group, California, has only access to 2 of these 3 layers. And as you can see, when there's no access permission for the 3rd layer, it doesn't even show up here in the table of contents. So this is a very easy example of applying spatial restrictions, but Security Manager can also get more complex. So first of all, when we go back to the Policy Explorer, we have 2 ways of looking at policies. The first, which I just used, was starting from the services and figuring out which groups have access to that actual service. We can also look from a group's perspective and, for instance, search for a certain group, which is called maintenance in this case. Here we find the service again, and we figure out which permissions users of that maintenance group have for that actual service. They only may see transmission lines, and on these transmission lines, we have different kinds of restrictions applied. So we have a spatial restriction, we have a feature restriction, which filters certain features out of that layer, and we also have a field restriction, which hides certain columns. And so again, let me do the same as before. Just use an identity which belongs to the maintenance group. Then you can see this is the result of what these users can actually see. We have just the transmission lines layer. When we look into the table view, then we see here is the voltage field that was used for filtering the features. So we filtered on features where the voltage is greater than 400. And as you can see, there's no value of 400 or less in here. And in general, we are seeing 6 fields showing up here in the table view. But when I switch back to my unrestricted example, first of all, let's switch off the other layers and zoom a little bit into that area. So I think you can already see there are a lot of additional features which are hidden for the other user. And when I look into the table view in here, first of all, we can see the voltage field where we have also smaller values now. And we see 9 fields instead of 6 because the last 3 fields were filtered for the other user group. And this is how you can actually define these different access restrictions for different users. So for instance, let's look at a final example, a user group called Imaginary. And this is a company running power plants and transmission lines. And therefore, we have a feature restriction in here where the operator equals imaginary. So when we look at that, let me open that again and log in with an identity which belongs to that imaginary group. Then this user can only see their own assets. So whatever we see here are either transmission lines or power plants which belong to imaginary power. So as you can see here, there's the operator field, and you only see values of imaginary power. And if you think about providing these kinds of specific views to different users, let's think of state-wise, and you're having 50 states. That's almost impossible to achieve without tools like Security Manager. Or when you think of providing restrictions just to single companies, and you have hundreds of different companies, you can't simply publish hundreds of services and make sure that every company has their own service. So this is something which is probably only possible with a tool like Security Manager. So with this, I would like to close my demo and just show you a couple of examples from our current customer base over here in Europe, just to give you a little idea what you can achieve and which kind of industries are working with Security Manager. And as Corey said before, like the GeoJobe tools, also Security Manager is pretty much industry agnostic, because you can find these kinds of requirements in almost every industry. What we are looking here at is an example from the Swiss Army. So they manage their property, and they have users which only allow to see properties in certain regions, so-called logistics regions. And of course, for such a slide set, I can't show the real army property, but they have an overview map, and also this overview map is spatially restricted. And so then that shows you that you have certain users who can see property in the whole country, while others just can see property in a certain region. Let's switch to another example. This is a German supermarket chain. They are having stores all over Europe. And in the left picture, you see the regions where they actually running stores. And of course, the general management needs access to all the store information of all the regions they are covering. But if you think of the people who are responsible for the national management, for instance, the Polish branch, they only get to see information of the Polish stores. And that even goes additional steps down to real store managers who only see their own store in there. Again, imagine providing individual maps for each store managers of probably thousands of stores over all across Europe. This is also something which is probably kind of impossible. Don't know why these slides always jump. But one other example is from the Archdiocese Munich and Freising, so a church example. Also, the church has lots of property in Germany, and this diocese administration, of course, needs to see all the property they have in the region they are actually responsible for. But each parish council from each parish, they also need access to that property information. So this is houses that belong to the church, or a real estate in any kind. There are also dozens of parishes in a diocese, and all of these parishes now get their can use this application to see their own property. The GIS managers don't have to provide individual services for each of these parishes. And finally, last example, this is an example from a shopping mall provider, also active in Europe. And this is a map with mall catchment areas. So that shows where actually the customers come from. And of course, the company management needs to see these areas for all their shopping centers, while the center management also needs to see, or also has an interest of seeing the catchment areas, but of course only for the mall they are actually managing and not for the other malls, which are also in that region. And this is also something where security manager can, filter content not based on geography, but based on the actual shopping centers, which are shown in that example here. Yeah, I think that closes my part. I hope the message came across what you can achieve with Security Manager. And I guess there are probably a couple of questions.
Perfect, perfect. I think Rudiger, if you stop sharing, I can reshare.
I will.
Awesome, thank you. And screen. There we go. I'm gonna get this a little bigger. There were some questions along the way, which is awesome. Thank you everyone who's been asking questions either via the chat or via the Q&A. Looks like Barry and Paul have been hammering the Q&A, so we're getting a lot of questions answered there. Again, we will have a dedicated Q&A period at the end, so we'll kind of sit back idly. And if we didn't get something answered during or via the interface, we'll answer it live. So no worries there. So before we get to that, first off, hats off to Rudiger. Great job as always. I'm always like, why should I learn it when he does such a good job at that? So good job as always. Like I said, there's been some questions as well. So next thing we're going to cover, probably what you've been thinking about besides the questions are the details. So a few details. The pricing starts at $7,500. That's based on a couple different factors. There are some enterprise subscriptions as well for you folks out there that got larger deployments. That is 2024 pricing. So what we're going to do is if someone buys either this year or in the next 6 months, we're locking in that pricing for you all. So there wouldn't be a price increase, but there will be a pricing increase actually happening in 2025, but we'll lock it in. How are we going to lock it in? Promo code will be emailed to you. So we're going to do a supplement after this webinar that's going to have the Q&A documented, a link to the recording if you want to go back and watch anything, and I'll also have a promo code included in there as well. Of course, trials are available, so you can try before you buy, make sure everything's going to work out for you, and then if you have inquiries, you can reach out to sales@geo-jobe.com. Either I'll get back with you directly or one of the folks on my team will get back with you. We'll get you squared away. So with that, we didn't think this was going to take a whole hour, so it didn't, but we have plenty of time for Q&A. Let's see, is there anything outstanding in the Q&A right now? So let's see. Well, it looks like Barry would like to answer the questions, but Barry, we could just read them out loud. Looks like you already answered them. Okay. Well, I'm going to go over some general ones that I've been seeing a common theme for, so in case anyone has not seen the Q&A. So Rudiger, if you could unmute yourself too, I'm going to ask you some questions and I'm also going to pay attention to this Q&A. Hey, does it work with ArcGIS Align or ArcGIS Enterprise or both?
It only works with the ArcGIS Enterprise because ArcGIS Online is a kind of closed system where Esri doesn't allow third-party technology to be applied. So therefore, it's ArcGIS Enterprise only.
Gotcha. Are there any plans to do ArcGIS Align, or is that just going to be something that's going to have to be restrictive for now?
That depends on Esri. So far, I don't see any movement there, but of course we are keeping we keep asking that questions to Esri.
Gotcha. As far as running Security Manager, does the customer need like a dedicated server to put it on? Like, how does it actually all kind of function there?
No, it actually runs as an extension of ArcGIS Server, and therefore you go to the ArcGIS Server Manager. There you have extensions mechanism. You just click on Add Extension, upload it, and then it becomes part of ArcGIS Server. The manager UI, so the user interface, what we have seen, this is something which can also run on the same system. Doesn't
Perfect.
require additional hardware.
Perfect. Perfect. And then I'm going to read this question that's live here in the Q&A. Doesn't look like I got it answered yet. Does it filter related table records?
It does, yeah.
So affirmative. It does that. Okay. As far as like documentation or anything, I assume y'all have documentation for Security Manager on the
Yes.
different releases.
Yes, this is something you can find online under docs.conterra.de. Probably somebody can paste the link into the chat or something like that, or you put it into your emailing afterwards. This is openly available, and so it's free to take a look at.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm just writing a note to myself. We will definitely put a link to that. If not already, I'm going to be put in the chat. We can definitely put it in a leave behind. So it looks like we had a couple more coming in. Does this work on a high availability setup?
It does, yeah, because ArcGIS Enterprise handles that spreading over different machines on its own. So it's something you just upload to an ArcGIS Enterprise site, and you don't have to worry about the high availability because that's all managed by Esri or by ArcGIS Enterprise.
Perfect. Does Security Manager work with versioning?
It will soon, yeah. Not at the moment, but this is something we have planned until the end of the year.
Okay. So just to confirm on that, does that mean you said soon, so that by end of year or like we're talking like at some point next year, I guess?
I hope by the end of this year. Fingers crossed.
Okay, that sounds good. So we answered that
Let's
live.
say soon.
Very soon,
Yeah.
everybody. It will work with versioning very soon. Let's see, another one's coming in. Does Security Manager have influence of the performance of the service? Does that have influence on the performance of the service?
Yes, of course it has. But this is a bit, yeah, that has different aspects. So of course the whole processing of Security Manager takes a certain amount of time. So on our demo system we have just seen, it's something like in the area of 10 to 20 milliseconds, or even faster. But what you have to keep in mind is that it also, when it filters out content, it also reduces the load on the GIS server. So of course, a filtered request provides less data than an unfiltered request, and that makes ArcGIS server respond faster than without Security Manager. So the overall, let's say the overall cycle from a user submitting a request until he gets a map back, that can even, or in most cases, it even gets accelerated compared to this, to the situation without Security Manager. But the footprint in terms of processing time, this is about in the area of, let's say, up to 20 milliseconds.
Perfect, perfect. So we answered that. I can take this one here. Does it come with extra cost for staging? As long as you are licensed with the standard subscription up to the same amount of cores and staging as you are in production, staging is included. And also, if you have more than that, there's additional pricing models, but also you can look at an enterprise subscription as well. So hit the done button. Does it work with UN?
Not yet. So this is something we have on our list, not very soon, but this is probably one of the, let's say, the big features we'll be looking into in the next year.
Absolutely. And I would say too, Jeffrey asked that question. That is something that gets asked pretty frequently. So I know Conterra's been taking a heavy look at it. As more and more folks adopt the utility network, it's definitely something to be incorporated.
Yeah.
Okay, does it work with ArcGIS Server federated with Portal?
Yes, it does work with a federated system as well as with an unfederated system. So all let's say, configurations of ArcGIS Enterprise are supported, that are also supported by Esri.
Perfect. Let's see. Okay, well, contrary to that, will Security Manager also work for a standalone ArcGIS server that is not federated with a portal?
Yes, it also works in such a configuration as well.
Perfect. And I can answer this one from Mark. Do you have any US-based local government customers? 100%. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one from Michael. Does he behave with Kubernetes?
This is something we just need to figure out because the support for SOIs, so for these extensions we are using for Security Manager, that just came with 11.3. And in the first couple of weeks after 11.3 was published, we were busy with providing, let's say, compliance to 11.3. And after that, we'll be, oh, well, now we'll be looking into Kubernetes. It should work. This is actually what Esri says, that SOIs work in the same way as in the, let's say, traditional deployments. But this is something we have to do some quality assurance. And when this is the case, then we'll publish that for Kubernetes as well. And if there's still stuff to do to make it work, we'll do it, because this is also an important deployment for our customer base. So far, it's not officially supported. It might work, but we have to quality assure that. But very soon, I guess we'll also officially support that.
Awesome. Everybody wants to know about Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Okay. Does Security Manager allow move folder and rename services to move? I guess hold on. I think it's just type kind of fast. Does Security Manager allow you to move folders and rename services?
Yeah, so first of all, when you publish a service or when you republish a service, you always have to make sure that Security Manager is activated again. But beyond that, policies are stored in a way that they don't depend on actual service names or actual folders they are published in. So when you move that into a different folder, you can just take the same policy provided to the service in the new location. It will work the same way as it did before.
Perfect. All right, so thanks for all the Q&A, everybody. This is awesome.
Very good.
I love Q&A. If an item protected by Security Manager is moved to the recycle bin and then restored from the recycle bin, do the permissions follow that item, or will you need to reconfigure those permissions?
Security Manager is not about items. Items are something like web maps or apps in Portal, and Security Manager just works on the server side. Security Manager just works in services. So when you create, for instance, a web map based on a service that is protected by Security Manager, and you don't know, you delete the web map and you take it off the recycle bin again and enable it again, it still relies on the same service, on the same REST endpoint, and therefore Security Manager will always be in place. And if you, let's say, delete a web map and create a new one, as long as they're using the same REST endpoints, the same services, Security Manager will always be in place. So it's pretty much independent of the portal items.
Perfect. Oh, I hit done. Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's see. Since the security is set up at ArcGIS server REST service level, then why can't the same service work the same way on AGOL side as well when we add the REST service URL and AGO web map? I think it should be able to, right?
Yeah, as long as the service is provided by a, let's say, on-premise GIS server, then of course you can use that service also in ArcGIS Online. But you can't just publish content on ArcGIS Online and then make Security Manager restrict access to it. So Security Manager has to run on premise, but of course the resources you publish with Security Manager can also be used in ArcGIS Online.
Right, so if you're doing partly cloudy, as I like to call it,
Yeah.
it'll work that way. Let's hit the done. Let's see. Are there any special licensing required for cloud-hosted enterprises, AWS? No. There are not. And done. Let's see, I'm going to read. All right, I'm just going to read this out loud. Can Security Manager run on the ArcGIS server that is used for the hosting server of an enterprise deployment? And would that allow you to manage hosted services?
It can run on the hosting server, but it doesn't allow to manage hosted services. You can, of course, also have reference services on the hosting server, but hosted services, unfortunately, don't support SOIs so far. So we're also begging Esri to support that, but so far without any success. So this is a technical limitation on the ArcGIS server side. So it doesn't run with hosted services. It only runs with reference services, but of course, it also runs with reference services provided on the hosting server. A bit complicated, but this is how it is.
Perfect. Or maybe not perfect in that instance, but great
Yeah,
answer.
well,
Let's see. Here we go. This is a good one. Actually, Gregory, I was going to tackle this if no one asked it. It says, what versions of ArcGIS Server are supported?
all versions that are also supported by Esri at the moment. So Esri supports at the moment everything between 10.9.1 and 11.3, and this is the same for Security Manager. And whenever a new long-term release is published, like 11.3 was the last one, then we directly jump onto it and provide a new release of Security Manager, which is then compliant to also the new long-term release of ArcGIS Enterprise. So of course, because interfaces change from version to version in ArcGIS Enterprise, we need to adjust Security Manager to make sure it runs securely on also new ArcGIS Enterprise releases. But we always make sure that it also covers everything back to what is still officially supported by Esri, which is usually 3 long-term releases. So 10.9.1, 11.1, 11.3 at the moment, and everything in between.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I'm going to done on that one. And this one, I think we've already answered it, but I'm just going to read it to you. Does it work with hosted services in RDS?
I didn't get the last part of the question, but it doesn't work.
RDS?
RDS.
RDS.
RDS. Not sure about that.
Yeah, I've been kind of dodging this one because hey, Jeffrey, if you want to put in the chat to me or to us, it's been a long webinar, so maybe our brains aren't firing.
Yeah,
You want
but the question about hosted services, that was already answered. So unfortunately not. But please talk to your Esri account manager and tell them that you need it. So the more people ask for it, the sooner they'll consider it, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think I'm, go voice it on the community or something. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, relational data store. Does it work with hosted services and relational data store? So we
Relational
are
data store.
the data
Well,
store hosted, but it's
I,
going to be hosted anyway.
it's hosted, yeah. I'm not an expert in relational data stores. If that requires hosted services, then the answer is no.
And Jeffrey, thank you for clarifying that too, by the way. All right. So we're about 10 minutes left. Looks like Barry has really just, and Paul, they've really torn up the Q&A answers here. They did a really good job. Okay, we answered a lot live. Perfect. All right, so I don't see any still open. The only thing, can use hosted feature layer views. Oh, feature layer, yeah, don't get me started with feature layer views. Not in this context, different context, feature layer views. So the only thing I'd say, I think we're in a good spot to wrap it up. I put the sales at geo-jobe.com alias in the chat. So if y'all have any additional questions, feel free to reach out there. If needed, I can reach out to Rudiger, Barry, Contero, or if I can answer them, we'll answer them. Again, sales@geo-jobe.com. There will be a supplemental sent out. So if you attended, you'll get that supplemental. That'll include the promotional code, a link to the recording, security manager documentation link as well. Anything else? I think that is it, besides telling everyone thank you. What about you, Rudiger? Anything you
No,
want to?
I think I'm fine.
He's good. He's good. A lot of thank yous. A lot of thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Hopefully you had a good rest, a good day, good election day. Made it out there. I appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.